An episode focusing on the anomaly. Great. Although... Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume. Things like Doctor Who, things like Red Dwarf, things like the MCU, and things like Star Trek. Today I'm reviewing the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery titled The Examples. So if you haven't seen it, go away, watch it, and come back once you have, because there will be spoilers. Before I get really into it though, let's take a couple of things to just take joy in right at the very top. First of all, USS Janeway. Very nice, like that. And Tig Notaro is back. Always good to see her. She's a very watchable character in this show. The character she plays is very, I don't know, it's just interesting and funny. And it's always nice to have her. So good to see her back in this episode. Hopefully we'll see her a lot more in the season. Now, that anomaly storyline. I've not been shy in saying that this just isn't gripping me this season as a storyline. Probably because it feels very repetitive of the last few seasons. Got a mysterious thing in space, and they don't know what's caused it, who's caused it, what's behind it, and they're going to investigate it. It's going to be a plot line throughout the season, and blah, 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 blah. And it just feels a little repetitive from the Red Burst storyline and the Burn storyline. And there's an element of that here. Again, the investigating what was behind the anomaly part of this story, I wasn't very interested in. And I'm still not very interested in. As a whole concept. Although, this episode is the closest I've been to being interested in it, if that makes sense. So it's not all bad. The latest in the mystery of the anomaly is that it seems to be just disappearing and reappearing elsewhere, sort of like teleporting almost. And they, for some reason, deduce from this that it must be being controlled because no natural phenomenon has done this before. Which seems like a flaw in logic. I mean, they don't know anything really about this anomaly, and so they're assuming that just because it disappears in one place and appears in another, and no natural phenomenon they've known has done that before, that it must be man-made. Seems quite a leap there in logic, but I mean, I'm not saying it's not a possibility, and then they do theorize that there must be something in the center of it controlling it, but I don't know, it just seems a bit of a leap. There were some nice references back to when they're listing off the races that could have done this, the Iconians, which I don't know, we've never seen in Star Trek the main series. They've been a feature of Star Trek Online, I believe. But are they still around? Do they have contact with the remnants of the Ionian Empire? Because it's the way they talk about them here, and they talk about the remains of the Iconian Empire. They talk almost as if they're around. So maybe at some point in the last 600 odd years, they have had contact with the Iconians. Maybe the events of Star Trek Online are, well, we know some of them aren't canon, but then maybe they're taking elements from that. Be interesting to see them, is what I'm saying. Get me some Iconians on the show, please. But they also reference various other races, including the Q Continuum. They say they have not heard from the Q Continuum in 600 years. Again, very interesting. What's happened to them? Are they still fighting that civil war that they were on Voyager? I mean, I suppose we're going to get some stuff about Q in the next Picard series. Is something going to happen in that causes the Q to go away and never be seen again for 600 years, at least 600 years? Could be. Nice references there anyway. So while I'm not massively intrigued by the anomaly, I almost don't care who created it or where it came from. What I do like about the story, the bits I do like about the storyline, is some of the interactions, some of the character stuff that it is giving us as a result of it just being there and the things it is causing. So I've already mentioned in previous reviews, Booker's storyline this season has come from his grief and dealing with that from his planet being destroyed, which is because of the anomaly. In this episode, we get a scientist turning up who is... I found his interactions with Stamets very interesting, very watchable. I mean, he is... what was his name? Mr. Tarka, that was it. He is a decidedly unlikable guy. He is rude, he is obnoxious and arrogant. He is, in very many ways, similar to how Stamets was when we first met him in season 1. Not exactly the same. He's a little bit worse, potentially, but there's a lot of parallels there between how Stamets used to act and treat other people and have an air of arrogance about his own intellect to how Mr. Tucker does. And that could make Mr. Tucker it does make him unlikable, but he is watchable. I don't know, there's something about the flavour the actor gives to the performance that makes his little quirks, his arrogance, actually quite watchable. I wouldn't want to be friends with the guy, but as a character on a TV show, he's quite engaging. So I enjoyed the scenes between him and Stamets, and I like that parallel between how Stamets used to be, and as a consequence, we see how much he's grown because he has changed. But also, Stamets does start to slip back into sort of his old ways in a way when he gets wrapped up. Initially, he's very hesitant about this guy, and but when they start doing experiments which may endanger the ship, Stamets is fully in there, like, excited by the science and starting to forget about how it might affect his crewmates, very much again like it was in season 1. So he's sort of getting this character is drawing him back into some of the worst of his own personality traits from earlier seasons, in a way. Luckily, he comes around and comes out of that at the other side, and he realizes that, you know, they had put the ship at risk by doing these experiments. What they're doing is they're trying to recreate a miniature version of the anomaly on the ship with a miniature control device in the center of this to try and get some readings on what kind of force this might be, what would be needed to control it, etc., just to give them more data. And it does. It gives them information by the end that it would have to be powered by something, you know, as powerful as a star, as a sun. So they do get data from it, but they come very close to blowing up the ship, basically, with a load of refugees on it, which is part of the other plot. And it's Saru that has to shut down the experiment in the end at the very sort of last moment before anything bad can happen, because the two scientists are just carrying on and going right to the edge of safety beyond the safe protocols, and I think Stamets realises that at the end. I think it's quite nice having the two there to sort of show how much Stamets has grown, but also that he can slip back slightly into his old ways. There's also something else going on with this scientist character, because at the end we get him interacting with Booker, and he's got this thing on his neck, which I'm thinking might link back to the Emerald Chain in some way. I didn't immediately recognise what was on his back. It might have been something we'd seen last season, but I'm guessing it could be sort of a branding symbol from being a slave to the Emerald Chain or something like that. If you know what it is, let me know in the comments below, because off the top of my head, I didn't know what it signified. But it was quite clearly meant to signify something. So we get all that comes about because of the anomaly storyline. And we also get what is the A plot of the episode, which is that they are evacuating this planet, which is potentially going to be subject to the anomaly. The anomaly is going to turn up and destroy the planet, so they need to evacuate everybody from it, which starts off as a very simple evacuation, get the refugees off the planet mission. But very quickly, we get presented with the moral dilemma of the episode, which is that there are some prisoners on the planet, 6 in particular, that the local government have no interest in arranging to be rescued. But Starfleet being Starfleet and Burnham being Burnham obviously insist that they get rescued too. I mean, I say moral dilemma, that's a pretty clear-cut thing. It's her butting heads with an immoral person or an immoral stance, but it's pretty clear what she should do. It develops even more than that and gets a bit more complicated when they get down to the planet, which makes it more interesting. Burnham decides her and Booker are going to go down to the planet and personally retrieve these 6 prisoners from their captivity and rescue them and put them back and bring them back to the ship. So that, you know, it's got some ups and downs, this storyline. There's some, I thought the stuff with the bugs was okay. You know, there's a bit of like espionage type actiony bits getting in there. They have, you know, some conversations about their relationship. At one point, Burnham mentions that, like, reminisces about their time before she rejoined Starfleet, and they, before they found Starfleet, and when they were just sort of working together. And she said before they became a couple, and she wanted to keep it professional. It's really weird that she wanted to keep it professional then, but doesn't now. Now she's a captain of a starship, and it's a bizarre. I love their chemistry, and I'm happy they're together. But it's just a bit of a bizarre relationship, the way that Booker is just kind of like stands around on the bridge next to her. It's kind of got this like slightly weird, like, I don't know how to describe it. Almost like he's her concubine, just on the side type thing, just standing around while she commands the ship. It's a really weird dynamic that they've got going on, because he's not part of the crew, so it's not inappropriate in that way. But the fact that she just has him around is slightly strange. in a kind of, that must be really awkward for everybody else on the bridge, that her other half is just there all the time while she's working. It's a very strange relationship, but I do like their chemistry, so I'm not unhappy that they're together. And when they get their scenes, like in their quarters and stuff, that's all very nice stuff. But they do get to the prisoners after a bit of thing, and we get more of the moral dilemmas, because they refuse to leave unless Burnham guarantees that they won't be just handed back over to the authorities from this planet to be captured again, to be locked up again. And these are mostly people that have committed minor crimes, stealing bread to feed family, joyriding a car, not stuff that should give you life imprisonment. But they are a very harsh authoritarian regime on this planet, and they locked them up as an example. These are the 6 examples of the title. And as a consequence, they claim they don't have much crime, because they set examples, and harsh examples. But obviously that is not okay. Burnham's not happy with that as a concept, but she is in this moral dilemma of this diplomatic situation. She's rescuing these people. She insisted on rescuing these people, but what happens if their planet doesn't get hit by the anomaly? Would she return them? And in the end, they work out that they can offer, if they ask for refugee status for being persecuted, then the Federation can at least consider their pleas. And she thinks they probably all have quite good cases based on what they are being arrested for. But the one guy, the sort of main ringleader of them, sort of hangs back a little bit and admits to Burnham that actually he is there for a very good reason. He killed someone. He feels he deserves to be there, and he's clearly seeking redemption for what he did. He clearly feels bad about what he did, and we eventually get the story about what happened, that he was somebody took him in, and when he had nothing, and was very kind to him, and he went and tried to steal stuff from that person. The person interrupted them, and he killed the person that had helped him. So it's got very very sort of Les Miserables, beginning of the Les Miserables vibes of the person taking you in and helping them, and then you stealing from them, although the ending's slightly differently, obviously, but that kind of vibe. And he left an orphan out of that, because the person he killed had a daughter, and he didn't realise till later he stole something that in their society is very important to them, this thing that is their entire family history, their entire family tree, and he had stolen that. So he's kept this for 30 years, hoping to return it to her one day as sort of penance. But he hasn't been able to, obviously, because he's been in prison this whole time. So it's I don't know how he managed to keep it in the prison. Who knows? And this whole storyline, when he was retelling that story, I thought it was very effective. The actor did a brilliant job. It really, really did sort of touch me and get me in the feels, because, like, I've said this before, but anytime there's anything with like parent-child dynamic, so just the idea of that child being left without a dad, or finding maybe her dad murdered or something, that really got to me. So that was a really sort of powerful moment in this. And in the end, he decides to stay because he feels he doesn't deserve to be rescued. So he passes on the item that he wants returned, and says, like, if you can keep hold of this. If you can get it back to her, please do. And he stays on the planet while the rest of them get beamed up to safety. And yeah, it was very touching. It was a really strong storyline there. So the whole anomaly thing is, I'm still not interested in who. I don't care really who's behind the anomaly. I don't care anything about the mystery of the anomaly. But where the anomaly has been good is the stories that have come about because of its effect. So Booker's storyline, just even meeting the scientist and things like that. Even in that very first episode, that when that Starfleet officer on that base dies, that was a touching moment. So, and here we've got this storyline of the prisoners and their persecution and how Burnham stands up for them later on as well, when the guy from the government of that planet storms in and says, why are they not in the brig? And she stands up saying, they are refugees under our protection and your law does not apply here anymore. Federation law does. You are all refugees now. So you're going to have to learn that you are not in charge and you have to abide by our laws. And your draconian authoritarian ways, unjust ways, are not going to stand here. So that was a really strong storyline. I really enjoyed that, and it's a storyline that was instigated by the anomaly, and so that aspect of the anomaly, I'm liking. What the stories we're getting from it, I'm liking. Just I'm not interested in the mystery itself. A couple of other things to mention in this episode. Culber, of course, has been this kind of very relaxed, calm presence throughout this season and a little bit into last season as well, where he has been this counselor figure and he's been sort of helping everybody else. He's kind of just been this calm, level presence. But here we get to see what's really going on under the surface of him and how this has all affected him. And what I really like about this is the fact that it has brought over some things, and this is a theme in this season. It's being explored with Booker particularly, but now also Culber, that trauma isn't something that is just there and gone, or there you deal with it, you do one thing to deal with it and then you're cured of the trauma. That trauma is an ongoing process, that you can have ups and downs, and I like the fact that a serialized storytelling format like Discovery can really explore that. So we've got Booker's storyline, which is consistently every episode we get something else of him having to deal with the destruction of his planet. He's still going through that, but that's very linear. And it has done things where he's felt a little bit better, like having the mind meld, but then the next week he's regressed a little bit, and that is like real life. But also we've got Culber now, who had a whole PTSD thing back when he first got brought back to life. But since then he's kind of like, it felt like he had dealt with it and moved on. But here we find out that was just kind of surface level. That actually deep down he is still dealing with it, and probably will be his whole life, because he's got this, as he talks to the other guy that I can never remember the name of, played by Cronenberg, him, the guy with the glasses, as he talks to him about it, because he wants bluntness, and as the guy is very blunt back to him, that he feels guilty for surviving. He feels guilty for being brought back. He thinks that if he's been brought back, it must be for a purpose. And if it wasn't for a purpose, then that means that's kind of like a middle finger to everyone that died and didn't get brought back, or the families of everyone that died and didn't get brought back. So he's got this kind of complex now that he has to overwork, do everything he can to save as many people as possible. Almost like Booker, because Booker is not happy that the one guy wants to stay behind, because the one prisoner wants to stay behind. He's not happy about that. He wants to force him to come with them. He doesn't want to let anyone else die, because he has that survivor guilt as well. So when Burnham says, no, it's his choice, Booker's not happy about that. And he argues for it, but ultimately the captain's way goes. And so they beam up without the guy, and that's very similar to Culber's persecution complex that he's got, that he's the savior complex. That's it. They both kind of feel they need to save everyone now. and that if they don't, they're wasting their second chance. Why did they survive when the others didn't? But yeah, I'm really liking this theme, this sort of mental health theme, dealing with trauma, complex thing that's going through this season. It's a really interesting topic, and I hope they continue it. And they've got 2 great examples of this on the ship right now. The only other thing I was going to mention is that Zora, the ship's computer that was integrated with the AI of the sphere, now has emotions. So that's kind of ticking on, gradually building what, and also it seems like the rest of the crew do know about Zora, and I assume most of the Starfleet do as well. So don't know what's going to happen there, but that's interesting that it's ticking along. So let me know what you thought of this episode. Like I said, I'm going to say it again, I'm not massively enthralled by the mystery of the anomaly, but I'm liking some of the storylines that we're getting because of what it does. Some of the human stories, or alien, the personal stories that we're getting because of the effects of the anomaly, rather than the mystery of the anomaly itself. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll be back for another Star Trek Discovery review next time. See you then.